In this country, why are we obese? But specifically in Mississippi, why are we obese?
Well, it's a complicated question, is it not? We weren't obese 50 years ago, at least not many of us were. This is a modern phenomenon. Has to do with our lifestyle more than anything else. There are big changes in the way we eat now, and there are big changes in the way we exercise. So 50 years ago, people lived on farms. 50, 70, 80 years ago, they exerted energy to get their food. Now we go to the grocery store and buy our food, and we have jobs, not out in the fields working, but we have jobs that allow us to sit at tables and work on computers. And
we used to go outside and play when I was a kid.
Exactly. Now the kids are mostly inside, and yeah, so our lifestyle has changed a lot. And so that's why as a society we're getting heavier than in the past. Mississippi is, it's really interesting to think about why so much in the deep south and in Mississippi. A lot of people, a lot of scientists think that it's because of the heat, where that was an advantage when we were working outside and we didn't have air conditioners. Now we have air conditioners, and so we tend to live inside in the deep south, and so we tend to exert less energy than people who are outside more.
So if you were outside working, you needed more food because you were perspiring energy?
Well, not just perspiring, but you were burning up calories when you were outside doing things. And then, of course, Mama's cooking has a lot to do with it, too. We like calorie-dense foods in the South, and, Mama's cooking is good for Sunday lunch, but not so good for our health.
We had real food a number of years ago, and now there's a lot of processed food. How do those two compare?
Well, the processed food is more calorie dense. It tends to have more fat in it, more carbohydrates, and so the processed food tends to be denser calories. And so if we eat the same volume of food as opposed to real food, we're not getting as much roughage. We're getting more dense calories, more fats, and so forth.
Who is more likely to be obese in Mississippi?
Well, there are gender and racial differences, and so if you are a black female, you're more likely to have the genetic predisposition to be overweight or obese than if you're a white female or a white male or even a black male. Not much differences on the male side between races, but there are significant gender and race differences regarding black women.
Genetics that then does play a part?
Yes, so it's genetics is a part of things. It's not the cause of our epidemic. If you want to understand that, just look at our pets. Our pets are obese as well, and they don't share genes with us. But there are individual differences in genetic predisposition. So let's take Africans. If you're an African living in rural Africa, you have genes that predispose you to being obese, but there are very few obese people in rural Africa because they still are gatherer hunters. They still expend a lot of energy and they eat real food. Urban Africans are heavier. They're more obese people. If you take that same genetic profile person and move them to the Caribbean, then that person will be more obese, more likely to be obese. If you move them to Mississippi, then the odds are really strong because they're going to be in an environment where there's a lot of calorie-dense food and where people don't exercise as much.
Is an overweight child an overweight adult?
It doesn't have to be, but it does predict it. And so it's important that we do all that we can to prevent obesity in children because it does follow you into adulthood. It doesn't mean that if you're an overweight child that it's inevitable that you shouldn't try to lose weight. But yes, your weight as a child has a strong influence on your weight as an adult.
That's because of the surroundings you live in?
Well, it's part of it is the surroundings you live in, and then there's that genetic predisposition that we talked about. And then when we're young, we're not only putting fat into fat cells, we're making fat cells. And so if we are overweight or obese when we're young, we actually have more fat cells to get fatter as we get older. And so it's really important to control weight in adolescence.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
We're producing fat cells. When do we stop producing fat cells?
When we stop getting smarter and growing, that stops somewhere around late adolescence and early childhood. Yeah.
And you produce more fat cells if you're already overweight.
Yes, so there are fat cells that are produced when we're young, and if you take in more calories, the body wants to give you more storage spaces for it. So one of the very difficult things about obesity is our bodies were designed to gain weight because we were designed to live in a culture, in an environment where we had to go hunt our food or to raise our food and to eat real food. We weren't designed to live in the kind of culture and environment that we live in now. And so everything about your physiology makes you want to gain weight and to hold on to that weight. And so yes, your body responds what we used to think of in positive ways. It would allow you not to starve to death along the way when you experienced the famine. Yes, now it's a huge disadvantage in today's society.
When you lose weight, do you lose the storage space as well?
Sadly, no. Sadly, no. Once you make those cells, they're with you for life, and that's one of the reasons that it's difficult for adults who were obese as children to manage their weight well when they're adults.
All right, now I want to ask you some fact or fiction questions. She's just big boned.
Well, we are built differently, are we not? Yes, and there are people who are different body shapes, and some of that is family history, some of that is genetics otherwise, but there are people who are shaped to carry more weight. So look at the National Football League. There are some very, very big people there who, if you measure their body mass index, their height and weight compared, looking at their BMI, it would look like they were obese, but they're these really fit specimens because they've got big bones and they can carry.
And we need to talk about BMI,
Yeah.
body mass index.
Right.
It's a formula. What is that formula?
It adjusts your body weight by height. So, it allows us to make some predictions about what your health will be relative to your weight and your height. So BMI is just a convenient index, and it's frequently used in research, but it's also used in clinical practice to help people understand what would be a good place for them to aim. So for a person who's 6.5 feet tall, their target body weight wouldn't be the same for a 5'2"
Does
person.
muscle play a part in that formula?
Muscle does not get accounted for in BMI. BMI is a rough estimate of things, but there is a measurement that helps us make better predictions. It's not muscle mass. That's a little bit harder in clinical circumstances to calculate and measure. But waist circumference is a really important addition to BMI to know about your health relative to fat or weight.
You've already addressed this at some level, but it runs in my family.
Yes.
If everyone in the family is overweight, chances are you'll be overweight as well.
Yes, so I've used the word predisposition a lot in this interview so far, and if your family history is for people to be overweight or obese, it's more likely that you will be. You'll be more likely, but it doesn't mean you have to be overweight or obese. There is a genetic component to it, but genetics don't drive the whole thing. It doesn't make us hopeless.
What about I exercise and eat less, but I don't lose weight?
Can happen. It certainly can. So long term, how much we exercise, how many calories we burn up, and how many calories we take in do determine what our weight will be. But day to day and week to week, it just doesn't work that way. Anybody who's watched The Biggest Loser has seen the shows where sometimes the contestant will have lost 15 pounds over a period of time, and then the next couple of weeks they will do the same exercise and the same diet, and they'll lose 2 pounds and not 15 pounds. And it's not a straight curve, and so sometimes we do go through periods of time. But generally, it's what we eat and how much we exercise that determines our weight.
Is it harder for someone to lose weight than another person?
Yes. Our metabolic rate varies from person to person. So how easy it is. And some of that is the genetic thing. So my father was thin, I'm thin, and my father ate a lot, but was still able to remain thin. He had a high metabolic rate, and I'll say that I eat mostly healthy food, but I eat a lot of food. And I have good friends who eat pretty much the same diet as me, who are 50, 60 pounds overweight. There is a difference in our genetic predisposition to how we hold on to body weight, a difference in our metabolic rate. When we talk about losing weight, we'll talk about metabolic rate again.
Last one. I'm overweight, but I'm healthy.
Yes. So you can be overweight and relatively healthy compared to other people who are overweight and not healthy. So if you're overweight, you're more likely to have diabetes, more likely to have hypertension, more likely to have some other health problems. But not everybody who's obese or overweight has those health problems. And so you can be overweight, obese, and healthier than other people.
How much weight do you have to lose, or does it depend on the person?
But generally, if a person loses 5 to 10% of their body weight, the health problems associated with obesity will get better. And that's maybe the most important thing I will say in this interview. You know, so many people who are overweight, obese, get discouraged because losing weight is so hard. Keeping weight off is even harder than losing weight, and become so discouraged. And so many of us, you know, want to be at ideal body weight. And so if we're 50 pounds overweight, we determine we're going to lose 50 pounds. And that's pretty,
Next week.
that's pretty hard to do. And so just knowing that you lose 5 to 10% of your body weight will make a big difference in your health should be an encouragement to people who are working hard to lose weight and find it hard to lose a lot of weight. But losing a little bit of weight can make a big difference.